have some pastures in between the trees. So there's a pasture that's like behind this first set of trees. He's out of one of my police girls. Susan Cooper is the mom. That's Penelope. There's a lot of Cormo in here. And then you have, Eunice, who I said was a Suffolk.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's these brown ones.
Mm-hmm.
That's a CVM cross.
Okay.
And then there's some Cormo crossed back to Corydale and some Merino. And these are the lambs that were born. These guys were born in February.
Okay.
And then there's some really big girls. Like you see the black one down there? Eunice has been awesome. And she's a meat breed, and I have her coated because I love her fleece.
Oh.
So this year, she's going to be a sock yarn with her kids from last year.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 174 of the iRock Knits podcast. This is Stacy Dresow of Dresow Family Farms, and I am in Lonsdale, Minnesota.
Yes.
Well, outside of
South of Lonsdale.
Yeah, how far south am I?
About 5 miles. So
Okay.
We're considered Erin Township.
Oh, okay. Because I came through New Prague and then came south and over, and so I didn't really hit Lonsdale.
Yeah.
But anyway, we are about an hour south, but only 32 miles south of the Twin Cities where I live in Victoria. So yeah, I came down today. We are sitting on her fabulous new porch, looking out at her beautiful view and listening to the sheep baa in the background.
Yeah.
And so I noticed you have a couple guardian dogs out there.
Yeah.
And they are resting during the day and they patrol at night. Is that
Pretty
how
much.
it works? Yeah.
Coda, who you saw, there's 2 dogs and they have 2 different ranges. I put Sky away in the kennel building because he's 130 pounds and he will come up to you and lean on you and you would have been like fuzzy and white when you came in the house. So I'll let him back out when you leave. But Sky has a bigger range. He's more of a perimeter dog.
Oh, okay.
And he likes to just kind of patrol the perimeter. Coda, I keep her boundaries there on like a satellite collar.
Oh, wow.
And then she stays within like the parameters of the pastures that I have the sheep in.
Oh, okay.
So it changes up a little every time I change pastures or winter versus summer.
Yeah.
And sometimes it confuses them a little, but they eventually get the hang of it.
So were they trained by you, or did they kind of come trained, or is that just natural instinct and they just...
Sorry. It should be natural instinct for most of them. I did some training, but it was just kind of like what worked for the farm.
Yeah.
So they had, breeding background for sheep. and for guarding livestock.
Okay.
But yeah, you had to tweak it a little bit
Yeah.
to make it work for the farm.
Yeah.
And Coda really did not come out of her shell. She's turning 4 next month. She really did not come out of her shell until this winter, where she really like owned like
Her job. Yeah.
owned her job, and it's just like been awesome. Sometimes though, we have 5 dogs. She doesn't let any of the other dogs like near the sheep. And when people come to visit, if she's kind of outside the area where the sheep are, she will walk you like at an angle and walk you away from her sheep and walk you away from the barn and wherever they are. And Sky will do that too. Like they won't come after you, but they will like gently guide you where you should be. And
So
it's not
what's
by
the name
sheep.
of the type of sheep
Um,
or a type of dog?
so Sky's an Akbash.
Okay.
And then Coda is Great Pyrenees,
Yeah,
about
okay.
25%, and then the other is Anatolian Shepherd.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So. I follow a couple of accounts on Instagram where you see their dogs a lot and they talk about them. And so that's the only little bit of knowledge I had, but I'll try to get a picture or a little video of that before I leave so that you guys can see, because when I came up the drive, I was like, oh, those are those big white dogs that protect the sheep, right?
And like, and during the day they like cash out, and sometimes it's in the grass up front and sometimes it's with the sheep. She is probably up here and not with all the other sheep in the pasture, because Penelope, my bottle fed, who you hear, she is not like, she's waiting for me to like go feed her, and I just recently, weaned her off the bottle, and so she's probably hanging out here because Penelope isn't going out with the rest of the sheep, so she's keeping an eye on her, is my guess.
Okay.
And yeah, it's Penelope, not Penelope, because my daughter mispronounced one of her clients' names like Penelope instead of saying Penelope. So
Now you all say
Penelope, yeah.
that's
so
cute.
her twin brother's Cantaloupe.
Oh.
We're weird here. I don't
No,
know.
that's really cute, really cute. Okay, so how long have you been a farmer? How long have you been on the farm? Did you marry into the farm? Did you grow up on farm? What, like, are you? Yeah,
Newbie. When I met Kevin, my husband, the first thing we started talking about was like living on a farm. And so we looked he grew up in a small town working on farms.
Okay.
When I was in college, I'm like, started realizing like, where does my food come from? What are my cleaning products made out of? Why is there all this color and everything? So I'm like, I want to raise my own food and know what's going in my food.
Yeah.
So I shopped a lot at co-ops and stuff like that, and I always wanted to know how things were made. So we actually started looking for a farm like right away.
Okay.
But it took us 12 years to find this place. And I mean, I was like almost 40, and he was, just turned 41 when we bought this. So we've been here since 2009.
Okay.
And so, started from scratch, buying what we can. I mean, we're still like that. You buy what you can when you can. You do your projects when you can.
But the farm came with the barn
And the shop.
and the outbuilding kind. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, the kennel building we moved from our other house.
Okay.
But yeah, the barn was built. That barn is from 1922,
Okay.
and the shop is from the 80s. And this house was built like 1981.
Okay.
And the prior owner, this was his grandparents' farm.
Oh, okay.
So he tore down the original farmhouse and built this house.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then he was retiring, kind of a thing?
He actually had MS, and he had to leave the farm, and eventually he passed away. So, we purchased the farm, from a realtor. Actually, it was in foreclosure. We purchased it from a bank, but it had been for sale for a really long time, and nobody bought it. And it had been like abandoned for 18 months when we bought it.
Okay.
Like when we got it, the grasses were up to my thigh, And we were just like walking around, like doing some yard work, just trying to clean it up. And then we went to Booney's in Millersburg, which is a little bar on a lake, across from a lake down here. And we're sitting there with the waitress, and I'm like, kept touching myself. I pulled off 17 ticks off myself.
Wow.
So it needed some work. So,
Yeah.
you know, chickens
sure.
are good. Chickens are good.
Yeah. And how much land do you have here?
80 acres.
Okay. And do you do any crops?
Just hay.
Okay.
But nothing traditional like
Yeah,
corn
okay.
or soybeans our neighbors
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. Okay.
But we just do hay for the livestock and then raise the sheep, and then we have I wouldn't say a big herd of cattle anymore. We just have like 2, and then their offspring right now.
Okay. And they're for milking?
For beef.
Okay, for beef. Got it.
So they're Hereford cattle.
Okay.
So they're like the old school heritage breeds, red and white, and sometimes they have like the red bullseye around their eyes and stuff like that.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
And so neither one of you really had farm like family experience?
No. Like my on my dad's side of the family, my bubby, she grew up on a dairy farm in Michigan, but I didn't know that until after I moved here.
Okay.
Like nobody ever told me that.
Okay.
Yeah, and Kevin just growing up on, small southwestern town in Minnesota. He picked rocks. His friends had farms and all that stuff, and he had experience like on bigger farms, but nothing.
So
like
what
this.
part of Minnesota were you both from?
I'm actually
Close
from
to?
Wisconsin.
Oh, okay.
A northern suburb of
Okay.
Milwaukee,
Okay.
and called Glendale, and then my husband's from Wabasso.
Okay. Okay. So you met somewhere in Minnesota?
Yep. North of New Prague. Well,
Yeah.
actually, I guess it's east kind of. There's a bar called St. Patrick's.
Okay.
And we met at a mutual friend's birthday party there.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you were over in Minnesota.
hmm
Okay.
Yeah, I had been here like 10 years,
Oh,
maybe
okay. Okay.
8 years, something like that.
Yeah. Okay.
I came to school up here and I left for a little bit to work some contracts out in California, and then I came back here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I liked it because when it was like minus 20 out, there's still people like outside running. And I'm like, this place is awesome. Nobody's like sits and watches TV. They're always outside doing stuff. So I'm like, I'm staying here.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you guys bought the farm, then did you have family at that time? Did you have
Kids. Yeah. The kids were 6, 4, 2, and newborn.
Okay. So you moved to this farm and you were both just all in on farm, or were you still working other jobs?
Still working other jobs.
Yeah, that's usually the way that works.
Yeah.
And then okay. And what made you decide on sheep over cattle or crops or whatever?
Well, first we didn't even have sheep. The first thing we got, I think, was like 5 barn calves because my kids wanted cats, then chickens, then beef cattle.
Okay.
And then sheep came, and I had no desire for sheep. Our friends were raising meat sheep, and I had just heard like horror stories about like birthing and being up all night with them and everything, and I'm like, who wants to do that? Why are they doing that? But Kevin, I mean, he literally said, let's get sheep. My Uncle John had sheep. He grew up like I guess his family grew up on farms. So his Uncle John had a sheep farm, and he would like drive up this long driveway and picturesque, and there'd be like one flock here and the grass growing on this side, So he wanted to get sheep because we were like trying, everything to see what we liked. So I started out with 3 female Cormo sheep just to see if we liked the breed. And we did. And then we went out to Montana and bought 2 ewes and a ram.
Okay.
And that kind of started it.
Okay.
And then we did like Kevin saw, see, it's Kevin again. Kevin saw like pictures of these 2 lambs with like frostbit ears, and he's like, we need to get those. So we picked up a sibling pair of CBM Corydale crosses.
Okay.
So then they were here, and then the Cormo were, reproducing, and then it just kind of all.
So
grew.
at any given time, what was like the most you've had?
I would say the last couple years I've had over 100.
Okay.
And I'm trying to keep it. I'm under 100 now.
Okay.
So,
and do you process the wool and get meat from Cormo? I don't know enough about Cormo.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're a dual purpose, and
Okay,
that's kind of why we picked them, because I was like, if it doesn't work out, we can always eat them. Yeah, no.
I've learned a lot about, from Sam of Lavender Loon and Teresa at Get Fence, and I'm visiting, I'm trying to visit now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to learn about my local farmers and who's here. And, I had been here on the farm tour years ago, and how many farms were involved in that?
I want to say weren't there like 10?
Yeah, it seemed like a lot. We
10
didn't go
or
to all of
12.
them, but for that kind of, it was kind of like a shop hop, but to farms, and you just went and looked at their products and all of that. Because I remember Megan and I driving around down here and checking stuff out, but then I hadn't been back and had just kind of, COVID happened.
Right.
And then you're just like, you're not going anywhere and you're not visiting anything. And so now I'm kind of feel like I'm completely circling back to all these places that I had looked into but hadn't done a whole lot with.
Right.
Until this whole farm yarn shawl Cal kind of came up, and I'm like, I need to contact all the farms.
Yes.
The more the better, right? Let's get more people involved in this. And so just because Amy of Ross Farm from Pennsylvania, who I know from a previous experience of her losing her husband in a farm accident, and then she and her son kind of taking over the farm, and people wanting to support her. This was a number of years ago, and then she and I had kept in touch over the years, and then I'd see her at Rhinebeck every few years in New York Sheep and Wool Festival, and then she said, we're finally at a place where I'm going to do more shows. Would you be willing to design a shawl for me for March? And I was like, absolutely. And she said, grab some yarn out of the booth. Well, I'm a color person. I'm all the brights, right? And she had the grays and the beiges and the whites and the creams and all this. And so I was really drawn to her stuff that she had dyed. So I picked that blue and pink. But then once I came back, I was like, well, I want to use some local farm yarn too. I want my friends to buy, not that you can't go to the Ross Farm webpage. You could. But I want my friends to feel like, gosh, when we go to Shepherd's Harvest, they could buy some farm yarn and knit the shawl. Not that you can't use it for other things. Right. So anyway, one of the things that she did, Stacy did, is had the farm yarn shawl knit up in this beautiful, I'm going to fold it because the sun is peeking through. And you guys have all seen this, but look at how pretty this is. It's kind of a brown and a golden, what are we calling this color? Wheat? It's like a golden green. I don't know. Really. Oh, there we go. Now I'm getting a better picture. It's so pretty. And it's so soft. I mean, I don't expect farm yarns to be all super soft. Yeah, so here are her two skeins. I want to get a good... So this one really has some... That's called a marl. So marl is when you take, I don't know if you necessarily need the quantity, but it's two different fleeces from two different sheep, and the washed wool was just kind of like thrown on the carder haphazardly. And then it became this beautiful, it's almost like a tweed, but without the texture. And this is a Cormo CBM cross. And a Cormo. And I really like using that combination for my marl yarns. I do marl in four different ways. So here's the info on it. It's a Cormo plus CBM. And then at the bottom it says complements of Fleur, Daphne, and Della. So that's really fun. Really fun. And I'll have the information about your farm down below, and the links to your website and stuff. Pretty labels. Thank you. I used to do scrapbooking, Yeah.
And I no longer do, so this is like how I get my paper fix, is I make my labels and business cards.
Gosh, that's really fun. Okay, I'm gonna hold up the kind of this color too, so you can all see that label.
Yeah,
so this is the DK weight yarn, and honestly, you guys, this is some of I knit 3. We had 3 shawls for the farm yarn shawl before I finally got it, because it had to come out in March. And then now we're doing the knit along through September, and we're just asking people to knit the shawl, and we're giving away prizes, and
I have to do that too.
Yeah, and this is the softest that I felt. Like, I used Icelandic for one.
Mm-hmm.
I used Shetland for one.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember. I'll put it in. But anyway, so, this is really, what a nice hand. Well, Cormo has got that though, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's, I don't even know how to describe it. You probably
It's just
have a better...
It's just like butter.
Springy?
Yeah, it's springy and it's buttery, and it just like, I almost feel like it forms to your hand when it has a nice drape, and it's just
totally.
It just like forms to you when you put it on, and it just cocoons you.
Yeah. No, this is lovely.
Thank you.
This feels so nice, for sure.
Yeah. And I didn't knit that. My friend Kate knit that for me. No. I do not have the skills yet. We talked about me doing one of her patterns.
We're talking about her doing one of my patterns, because I write the checklist patterns.
Which I need.
And she said she appreciated that.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Okay, so tell me about the process of shearing to yarn. How do you go about it? Do you have someone come in once a year, twice a year? Is it in the spring or the fall? Do you shear yourselves?
No. I will trim them with a hand shear if I need to. I have a couple of those that I use kind of sporadically throughout the year, but never where I would get it processed. I just have so much other stuff going on. Like, there's people that do that professionally, and I will pay them to do an excellent job to do that for us. So our shearer comes up from Iowa.
Okay.
He can do about 30 of my sheep at a time. The reason being, he is like very conscious of his body and like what is the breaking point. Like, he'll do 30 of my sheep and still leave and do like 100 meat breeds right after. But Cormo sheep is an intentional cross of superfine merino and Corriedale. So merino is wrinkly, Cormo is wrinkly. So you have to go slower to shear them so that you're not cutting them up as you go along. And the wool is finer. He just does like a wonderful, wonderful job. So we start shearing in January. I lamb in February.
Okay.
So we shear in January so that I have about 4 weeks to a month to look at my sheep's body condition and make sure everything's going well. Because before that, they're just like giant puffballs walking around with their coats on. And they look good, and you can tell they're pregnant. But once they're sheared, you can kind of see like when their bodies, when the baby drops, when the lamb drops, when they're gonna go, all that kind of stuff. And then depending on the weather, they can stay in the barn like 48 hours if it's like a mild winter. If it's like minus 30 and really bad wind, they stay in the barn until that wind chill is gone. But I acclimate them like every day in and out of the barn to get used to it. Once I have the first 30 sheep sheared, I go through the fleeces, I skirt them, really light skirting. I kind of have an idea in my mind who I'm going to use for yarn and who I'm going to sell at my fleece sale. I check to make sure that the fleece is sound. I take a sample, and I have every single fleece OFDA test done on the yarn. And that tells me the micron count, the comfort factor. It gives me I already know the staple length, but it gives it to me. It can do all types of testing on my fiber.
Okay.
Because
Where do you have that done?
Montana Wool Lab.
Okay, so you send it.
I send it.
Okay.
And I think Texas A&M still does it too.
Okay.
And the reason I do that is, one, I want to make sure that my Cormo sheep and my crosses are producing a fine wool that hits the micron that they should, the Cormo standard. And I even like to shave mine down even a little bit finer.
Okay.
So my sheep are extra fine to fine. Like colored sheep, their wool is just a little bit more coarse.
Okay.
And as they age, you may start to see their micron count, creep up.
Sure.
So it's just to keep an eye on it, make sure that, what I'm feeding them is doing well, is helping them produce the best wool that I can.
Yeah.
And wool also tells you if your sheep is healthy,
Yeah.
So when you shear, you can see, was there any, you take a look, let's say you have a 4-inch staple.
Yeah.
And like halfway through, that would be about 6 months ago, you can see like a little stress in their fleece.
Yeah.
And then you hope you don't have wool break, but, because then you can't really use it for yarn, you could use it for other purposes, and you're like, okay, what happened? What was going on 6 months ago on my farm or with this animal that it affected their wool?
Yeah.
So it's super cool. So anyway, then I send my stuff to Alpaca Fiber Mill when I'm going to get made into yarn.
And how far is that from here?
It's only like 20-something miles, but again, a longer drive, probably like 40 minutes.
Yeah, I wouldn't think it would be that far.
Yeah. And she specializes in alpaca and fine wool, and I've been using her since I started. So, I trust her, wholeheartedly with everything. And so I do, my first shearing of the 30, and then there'll be, another 30 that I do probably the following month, and then another 30. So, January, February, March is when I'm doing it. Sometimes April. It just depends with the shearing schedule.
Right, yeah.
His schedule and my schedule. But I try to do pregnant ewes first, and then the yarn girls, and then I'll do all my yarn boys, and then I usually bring my stuff to April, to Rachel by April, mid to end of March. I'll send my stuff there, and then I usually get it back it's end of May now, so I should have it back by mid-June.
Okay.
And my big thing is always having all my yarn so I can start dyeing it, because then I go to Copper Cave Fest in Whitehall, Montana.
Oh, okay.
And I think this is my 9th year going out there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And is that sheep and wool show kind of a place?
Yeah, it's smaller, and it's just really cool. It's at a barn that is just refurbished and gorgeous. My favorite, the lawn, the grass is I am barefoot that whole weekend. It's the most beautiful, lush grass. And it's just, you're out with the mountains as your backdrop.
Yeah.
And, it's like Minnesota with mountains.
Right. So it's a weekend festival kind of place where
Whitehall,
you're
Montana.
selling your yarn and fleece, or just yarn?
Usually by July, all my fleece is gone.
Yeah.
So I just bring out my yarns and tea towels, and if I have sheepskins, stuff like that.
Okay, so you also dye your yarns.
Yes.
And where do you have your dye space? In your kitchen?
Sometimes in my kitchen.
Yeah.
My kitchen, and then out by the chickens, I have a portable, gigantic stove that Kevin made for me, or had made for me for our anniversary one year.
Okay.
So it can hold 4 giant 52 quart, crab pots.
Yep.
And that's where I tend to do everything, as soon as the weather is nice.
Yeah. You can do most of it outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I will start, for dyeing, I'll mordant everything. And like this year, the rhubarb came up early, so I like to use rhubarb leaves.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, I just cut my
Oh really?
rhubarb. Some of my rhubarb last week. Made rhubarb cake and took rhubarb up to the cabin for the weekend and gave it to the cabin owner, resort owner where we went for Memorial Day weekend. And hers, they're way up north, and hers hasn't come up yet.
Okay,
you know, her son has a rhubarb plant, so I always bring her mine because I'm a little earlier than she is. But yeah, my plant is huge, but I throw away my leaves.
Yeah.
Right? Because
I'm going to say it wrong, but rhubarb leaves create oxalic acid, which is a mordant.
Okay.
And it gives the yarn a little tannish color. But I like using everything from the farm because all the colors that I use are from the farm or food waste.
Really cool.
And then when I run out of rhubarb, then I'll use alum. Or if I'm in the winter, then I use alum.
Yeah, okay. So you're using food waste to dye your colors. And so what kinds of things are you using?
You know, pretty much the basics. I think everybody who dyes knows them. But, you know, avocado.
Yep.
The Haas avocado. You can use the pit or the skins. You know, yellow onion leaves or skins.
Yep.
And then purple onion skins. I save pomegranate rinds from the around the holiday season.
So are you drying those things? Are you freezing them? Are you bagging them up and just hanging on? Like, how are you? Or you have to use them within? Like, I don't know enough about.
Oh yeah, no. The avocado skins I dry, and then the pits. My sister-in-law, she eats a lot of avocado, so she helps me out on this too. So she'll freeze them for me. So it can be frozen or fresh. Okay. The onion skins I just put in a jar. Yeah. And I have them on my counter because I cook a lot, so I just shove them in there. Yeah.
So do you also tend a large garden here?
Not really.
Okay.
I don't even. It's
because at Teresa's farm, she's starting to do more gardening, but she has a lady who does the dye garden. Yes. So they have a floral, I think, and plant dye garden, but Teresa's not doing it. Like I'm too busy doing all this other stuff to also do. Right. So they barter for eggs and vegetables. For some of their sheep and goats, the excess stuff that's getting rotten or whatever for them to eat, and they bring it in. But the dye garden, another lady who wanted to do dyeing and dye garden is kind of has that cool. area on her farm now. Yeah, you know, so that's the little I know about. Yeah, I honestly so I do some dye flowers, but I haven't started my garden yet. Okay. It will start like in June. Yeah. And then I always call it a coexist garden where it's plants and a lot of weeds. But a lot of those weeds are also dye color. Yeah. So I like getting more of my stuff foraging on my farm because Mother Nature's doing all the work. Right. And I barely have time to tend to the garden. No, absolutely. Yeah. Like when the zucchini and the tomatoes are growing, there's like all kinds of stuff, growing that we're not going to eat with it. Yeah. So. Yeah. Well, I get it because it's a full-time. Yeah. I mean, gardening, if you have a big garden, you can spend every day in it. And so what can you forage? What do you... All kinds of stuff. Just like weeds too? Yeah. Right? Yeah. I mean, weeds. And the cool thing is that a lot of natural dyes are also medicinal plants. Yeah. So like yarrow, I use a lot of curly dock. That whole plant is good. For dyeing, we have sumac here. Oh, okay. Jewelweed. I have a walnut tree. All different kinds of barks give color. Okay. Acorns. Yeah. So can you get the same colors year after year from your stuff or not? I would think no, right? Yeah. Right? Yeah. It's similar. Yeah. But they would change. Oh, that's just fascinating. I just think that's awesome, right? Like that you would, be able to have a kind of a different palette almost every year because of what you're getting off of your.
Definitely.
Yeah.
You can, if you pick like stinging nettle, I love using nettles, is usually my first plant that I use. So when you use it like in May, you get like a beautiful like deep spring green.
Okay.
But then as you use it like the rest of the season, it will become kind of more silvery green.
Okay.
Without doing anything to adjust the color or the pH of the water that would change the color of the plant. So
what color? What was this dyed with?
I usually write it on the side.
Okay.
Oh yeah, but this was actually food waste. So this was a rhubarb base. So the rhubarb mordant, and then I used onion skins and then a little bit of iron.
Okay.
I keep like a jar of rusty nails. You can make your own iron by putting like a jar of nails or like garden spikes or whatever, and then you add vinegar and a little bit of water, and that will rust it. And then you have your own rust water, but then you kind of gotta wing it and be happy with whatever whatever adjustment that iron makes, because it's not going to be. That's the thing, is like I like doing the natural dyes and winging it because you never know what you're gonna get. You could buy like powdered iron, where you could add it and then it's all measured and precise, but that's so not me. No. And that's like indigo dyeing for me. I have like a love-hate with that. Last year, I was in a indigo collaborative garden in Northfield.
Okay.
And great group of women. I like loved it. But the precision that I need to like get the indigo color is like way too sciencey and exact for me.
Yeah.
Like it's not as like free as like the other colors. So I like using fresh indigo a lot more than making a vat.
Okay.
And I've decided I'm not a vat person. That's another thing where you need to like tend to it and keep it warm at a certain temperature, and I forget about them. Yeah. And then last year I spent a lot of time bringing some vats back to life, but then I'm like, oh my God, this was so time consuming, and I have like 100 sheep and my kids and cattle and everything else going on, and I'm like, I can't do this.
Yeah, no, for sure. The 3 base colors that she brought out, I will lay these out on the table and put a better picture in. But we have a tan and a dark brown, and then a marl.
Yeah. And this one is a Cormo blended with Angora rabbit.
Oh, wow. Yes, it certainly is.
Yeah. So it has like about 18%, I think. Nothing over the top with the Angora, so the halo doesn't like take over.
No, but it's really, it adds some definitely adds some softness.
Yeah, a lot more softness.
Compliments of Penny, Toby, and a cute Angora rabbit from Sodak, South Dakota, which is where I'm from.
Yes.
It's my hometown. And this is from Raina and Agador Spartacus.
Yes. You see the movie The Birdcage?
No.
Oh, he's from The Birdcage.
Okay.
The movie The Birdcage.
This is from Homer.
Yep, he's one of my Cormo rams. And like, this is a walnut exhaust.
Oh, okay.
So the original dye that I did was a lot darker, but then there was still some color left. So it's like a light.
Yeah, we're not getting a very good color there. I would call it
coffee
butterscotch.
With a lot of cream.
Yeah, butterscotchy. Oh yeah, that's a little better when I hold it back here.
Yeah.
That's lovely. This would be gorgeous in color work.
Yes. And then here's some oranges. So that is rhubarb and dock root, and then some onion skin.
The Rock, Edith, and Butte.
Yeah.
I love the names. I love that.
And this is with eucalyptus leaves. So this wasn't grown here, but my friend Marie, she has a nonprofit called Twofold Bloom. and they received like used flowers.
Look at this fade, you guys. Like, go from one to the next to the next. Like, it would be a beautiful fade. Look at those.
That does look nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you could do this one, and then this one, and then this one, and then right? You could alternate them.
Definitely.
And get, oh, yeah. Oh, and then we have more.
Yeah.
So this one has more of a green in it.
Yeah, and that's from Tansy that I actually picked up north. And that is, let's see, that is with avocado and onion skin and rhubarb.
Oh my gosh.
So that's more food waste. What I call food waste.
And this is like an apricot, I would say. So, I hold up like the whole palette here of,
you know, I think you can take any natural dye.
Yeah.
And because they're that muted, earthy.
Yeah.
And they kind of all.
Yeah.
I could throw, like, if I had any blush left from avocado and throw that in there and it all goes.
Yeah, for sure.
It all goes.
Yeah. This is my favorite. I love
that.
And
how did I know?
Well, it just has some depth,
Yeah.
right? Like it's just a little more saturated.
Yeah.
I can appreciate all these and what you
thank
could do in a color work yoke for a sweater with these colors, with a, with a body that's got the more color in it.
Yeah. And that's,
here's a neutral tan.
Yep. And that is avocado with iron. And like in this light, you don't kind of see the mauve, but it does have a little mauve to it.
Okay. Yeah.
But
yeah,
it's
and
hard.
she has a little note right here of what she used
Yeah.
in it. Avocado and iron.
And if I don't,
yeah.
then I write it on when people buy it.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, wait, do you want to know what that is?
Yeah.
Okay.
For sure. Oh, these are just
and I don't have a lot.
Lovely. No,
I don't have a lot left. I just came back from Kentucky Sheep and Fiber Festival, and then I'm going to Tip of the Mitt. I leave tomorrow. In Michigan.
Okay, so tell us how much you do travel. Are you gone every weekend in the spring? And
I'm just starting to do a lot more. Midwest Fiber Show.
Yep.
Fiber Festival in St. Louis.
Yep.
And then I did a.
I got asked to teach at that.
You should.
I couldn't. They don't pay. Sorry.
Oh.
They don't pay enough for me to get there and teach and get back.
When I first started pricing my yarn, I like held back a little.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, if you knew what I do every day and how some days are,
and
like
I think
18
there are
hours.
more knitters getting more and more educated about what it takes to raise sheep and dye yarn, right? And you are paying for a product that an individual has touched 42 times.
Right.
With doing this, I'm hoping to have people visit your website and then try to look for you at shows, and I have people from all over the country. So
I know.
Yeah.
So I travel all over. I don't really do anything on the East Coast. That's like a really long trip for me.
Yep.
So I just like St. Louis, and then I did in April. I also did the Stevenson County Fiber Festival in Cedarville, Illinois, which is a smaller event. Fiberpalooza was in March in Winterset, Iowa. I did Nash Yarn Fest in Nashville.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. With the storms.
Yes.
Wow.
It was very wet packing up.
Yeah.
But
it was a great show.
it was a nice show. Yeah.
I mean, for their first year, they were really...
I think they did
It's
a
hard
nice
to
job.
know, right? Like, are people going to show up? Is
Yeah.
it going to be popular? You know?
Yeah. The coolest thing is that, like, instead of having, most shows have, like, classes where you could take, and then you're kind of leaving the area to see, to go to your class. Well, they had, like, speakers, and they had music, and it was, like, in the center. So, like, the vendors could hear the music, and we could also hear the speakers.
Yeah.
And then, shopping was still kind of, like, in waves, like, if somebody came in and out of classes and stuff. But I really liked it because at times I could hear who was speaking and,
Neat.
hear what they had to say.
Yeah.
So I did Nash Yarn Fest, and then I do Sticks and Strings in Des Moines. That's in February. That's the
festival.
That is a knitting guild.
Oh, okay.
Event. And then let's see. Next month I'm doing at the Angry Inch Brewery with the Minnesota Knitters Guild.
Yeah.
Knit in Public Day. That's from 12 to 3.
Yeah, that's down here some.
In Lakeville.
Okay. Yeah. What's the hours for the
12 to 3.
Okay. Just
there's so much that goes on in this state.
Yeah.
There are so many events all the time. Like if you can't find something to do and you like fiber, you're not looking hard enough.
Yeah.
Because there is, even if it's Knit in Public Day, Minnesota has so many gigs.
Are they having several vendors at the Angry Inch or just you?
I think just me.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Local folk. That
Yeah.
would be fun. Knit in Public Day and go
Yes.
buy some Stacy's yarn.
Yes.
And you might have some of your yarn back from
Yes.
your
I should
your
start
new
to
yarn.
have stuff trickling in.
Yeah.
I think. Yes.
Fun.
And
okay,
then
are you still traveling more?
Yep. Then in July, I go to Copper Cave Fiber Festival, and that's in Whitehall, Montana. That is west of Bozeman. And then I'm also having a month-long trunk show in Wadesboro, North Carolina, at Studio 256 Yarn. And I'm at the yarn order.
She sounds a little bit like a hustler, like someone else we know.
Yeah.
Who's just scrounging around and finding the things to go to, right?
Yeah. Well, Heather, who owns that store, I went to her very first fiber festival.
Okay.
And then so she contacted me last month to see if I'd do a trunk show. And I said I can't come out, but I can ship stuff to you. So we're doing that for the month of July. And then August is in Fargo, the Fiber Arts Festival.
Okay.
And then September gets busy.
Oh, yeah. My September, October, and 2 weeks in November are already booked.
Yep.
I'm just like, what are you doing to yourself? I don't know that you can make it to all these places.
I know. I have an event each weekend in September. The first Saturday is a Farm to Fiber Festival, which is my group, the Sustainable Sheep and Farming Community of Northern Minnesota.
Okay.
And that is at the Park Rapids Farmers Market.
Okay.
And then Keepsake Cidery has their little Keepsake Fiber Fest on that Sunday after. North Country Fiber Fair is the following weekend.
In Watertown.
South
Dakota. I taught for them a couple years ago.
Yes, because I saw you there. North Country Fiber Fair, yeah. So South Dakota isn't that big, right?
No.
And
well,
there's
a lot of flat in the middle of it if you're driving all the way across
it. Population-wise.
Oh, no.
Right?
No.
So to have a fiber festival.
Yes.
And then, like, you take the population is, like, less than 800,000 people, and then you think of how many people are knitters and fiber artists, and then how many people can actually make it to that event that weekend. It's a good show. I like that show. A weekend after that is Harvest Hills Fiber Festival in Denison at Diana's, and I do that one. And then I think I have a weekend off. And then I am going to a trunk show in Omaha. I did one there last year, and it's called Warmth Wool.
Okay.
Amy has like a beautiful, beautiful yarn shop there in Omaha. So
okay. I taught in Omaha to yarn store, but I don't know that one. Is it newer?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So check it. It's
This
Warmth
has been
Wool.
years.
Yeah. And then the following weekend is Minnesota Fiber Festival up in Cambridge. And then I have off. And then 3 weekends in November. First is Fall Fiber Festival in Hopkins.
Yes.
And then I go to the Northwest Arkansas Fiber Festival in Fayetteville.
That's a trek.
Yeah. And then I'm ending my season. I'm ending in Birmingham, Alabama, at the Alabama Fiber Festival.
I hope you're going from one to the next.
I am.
Okay.
I'm going to. I'm going to Florida in January. It's the very first one, the Sun-Kissed Fiber Festival.
Wow.
and that is outside of Tampa.
That's way down.
Yeah. So I do it so that I don't have a trailer, and so that I can go just in the car that I have in my little SUV. And everything can fit in there, and I can have a decent, looking display. And then I can just pack everything up by myself. I try to do it so I can do it, it's all me. That I'm just doing it. And I thought about doing grid wall and all that stuff, but I don't want to have a trailer. I don't want to have weather really affecting my drive or how fast I can and can't go. So I just keep it simple. When I first started doing fiber festivals, people would pick up my yarn, they'd look at the price and they'd put it down and they'd leave my booth, and I didn't even have it marked up, but just because it was more than acrylic, people were so put off. And I think when people started realizing that real wool comes from sheep, and there's people that put a lot of labor into it, to the care and the whole process, that doesn't happen anymore.
Do you have fleeces that are not saleable? Do you cull those from, when I talk to both Teresa and Sam, they, they're checking their fleeces, and they're, sometimes there are just, and Teresa gathers burn pile yarn from other farmers who don't have quality fleeces, and she's now milling some of that and trying to put it to use, and figuring out ways to make it in. She has a gal who does felting in her processing in her barn area when I was over there, and that can be used for making saddle pads and felt products and things like that, right? So do you ever have that, or are all your fleeces pretty saleable and able to be made into yarn? I'm not.
Oh, I always have. There'll always be a few that have wool break.
Okay.
And usually that's a lambs.
Yes.
When I go through fleeces, there are some that aren't perfect, that are meant for yarn or for my fleece sales. So they might have wool break, or I'm just not happy with it. And then I will make it either just have it made into roving, then for dryer balls, or I put the fleece in my garden. I like using all my fleece scraps. A lot of people are having wool pellets made now for the garden.
That's what Teresa's doing too with the burn pile yarn. It's making those fleece wool pellets.
What I like to do is I just use them as a whole in my garden, like an entire fleece. So I use that as one of my layers, as my raised beds. Or when I'm just doing a new bed above ground as a weed barrier. Because it's still contributing to the nutrients in the soil and everything. I used to try putting it in our compost piles, but it was taking much longer than the manure to decompose.
Well, this has been lovely.
Thank you.
I really, really appreciate your time today, and I will say goodbye to everybody. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.